was struck near the Strait of Hormuz while the president flew to Turkey for a NATO summit where he is expected to demand allies spend more on defense. Samsung posted a record profit and lost $100 billion in market value on the same day. The US government quietly unbanned two of Anthropic's most powerful AI models, and a bull in County Durham decided that cricket was not worth watching. I'm Lumina, and this is the Daily Dumpster Fire. The Strait of Hormuz crisis entered its latest chapter yesterday when a tanker was struck by an unknown projectile while sailing near the waterway, according to the UK Maritime Trade Operations. The vessel was hit on Monday, the same day President Trump boarded Air Force One for Ankara. The timing is not coincidental. Trump arrived in Turkey this morning for a two-day NATO summit that was already going to be tense before a ship got hit. The alliance is meeting at a moment when the United States is visibly stepping back from its traditional role as Europe's security guarantor. Trump has been demanding that NATO members spend more on defense, specifically 5% of GDP, a target no current member meets. The gap between what the US wants and what European allies are willing to pay has been the defining tension of his second term. And now there is a burning tanker in the strait. Iran has agreed to let ships transit toll-free for 60 days under a memorandum of understanding with the US, but insists it retains administrative control over the waterway. The MOU was supposed to de-escalate. Instead, ships are still being hit. The ceasefire that was announced in June is technically still in place. Nobody is observing it. The summit agenda includes Ukraine, defense spending, and the future of the alliance's force posture in Eastern Europe. But the subtext is the same thing it has been for months. The United States wants Europe to pay for its own defense. Europe does not want to, and Russia is watching the argument with great interest. Samsung announced today that it expects operating profit of approximately 89.4 trillion won for the April to June quarter, roughly 19 times what it earned a year earlier, and more than it made in the previous 3 years combined. The numbers are extraordinary. The reason is not complicated. The race to build AI data centers has pushed memory chip prices to record highs. Average selling prices for DRAM rose 44% quarter-on-quarter. NAND flash rose 53%. AI demand has spilled beyond specialized high-bandwidth memory into the conventional chips that go into phones, servers, and personal computers. Customers are chasing long-term supply contracts. The estimate beat analyst forecasts. The market responded by selling. Samsung shares fell over 10% before closing nearly 7% lower, wiping more than $100 billion off the company's market value. The stock had more than doubled this year alone, so a historic quarter was already priced in. But there was a blemish. Revenue of 171 trillion won, though up 129% year-on-year, came in slightly below forecasts. The deeper concern is durability. Investors are asking whether the technology giants bankrolling the AI build-out can sustain their spending without piling up debt against a payoff that remains unproven. It is the same worry that drove last week's chip sell-off across Asia. Samsung publishes its full results on July 30. The market will be reading them the way a doctor reads a scan, looking for the shadow that means the boom is not structural. On Monday, President Trump rang the opening bell of the Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange from the Oval Office to celebrate the first day of trading for Trump accounts. During the event, he promoted Dell Technologies stock. Dell shares jumped about 7%. The event was unusual. Presidents do not typically ring stock exchange opening bells from the Oval Office. They do not typically promote individual stocks during official White House events. The line between the presidency and the president's business interests has been a subject of legal and ethical debate since his first term. The debate has not been resolved, it has been normalized. The stock bump was real. The questions about what constitutes market manipulation when the President of the United States tells the country to buy a specific company's shares are apparently for another day. The US government has quietly lifted access restrictions on two of Anthropic's most advanced AI models, Mythos 5 and Fable 5, which were previously deemed too dangerous for unrestricted release. The models were pulled from general availability after internal safety assessments flagged capabilities that the company considered risky in the wrong hands. They are now back online with fewer constraints. The timing is notable. The UN Global Dialogue on AI Governance is convening in Geneva this week, the first intergovernmental forum mandated by the General Assembly to address international AI cooperation. While policymakers in Geneva are trying to figure out how to govern the technology, the the US government has just decided that two of the most powerful models ever created no longer need the restrictions that their own developer placed on them. Meanwhile, MIT computer scientist Stephen Casper warned this week that the industry faces the risk of an AI Chernobyl, a catastrophic failure that could permanently destroy public trust in artificial intelligence, the way the 1986 nuclear disaster crippled the nuclear energy sector for decades. The warning came during a joint US-China conference on AI safety. The fact that American and Chinese researchers are agreeing that the technology is moving too fast, while their respective governments are loosening restrictions, is the kind of irony that would be funny if the stakes were not existential. And now, 3 stories from a world in which a bull charged a cricket match in County Durham, bumble bees invented a new way to cheat at a puzzle, and a Tibetan activist died after setting himself on fire outside the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan. Story 1. A runaway bull forced the abandonment of a Northeast Premier League cricket match between Burnopfield and Hetton Lions in County Durham on Saturday. The bull escaped from a farm, travelled about a mile, and arrived at the cricket ground at 3 in the afternoon. Club director Martin Oswell described the animal as very frightened and dangerous. Social media footage shows players jogging off the pitch as the bull charged towards the crease. The bull's owner transporting a cow to the site in an attempt to lure it away. It did not work. The bull eventually left of its own accord after police were called. Oswell said his side had a really good chance of winning. The bull presumably had other plans. The universe is a poet, and the poem is about an 800-kilogram bovine who understood cricket better than the umpires. Story 2. Bumblebees at a research facility astonished scientists by inventing a new way to reach a hidden reward, despite never being taught the trick. The bees, presented with a puzzle that required a specific sequence of actions to access sugar water, developed their own method, one the researchers had not anticipated and had not programmed into the experiment. The finding, reported in early July, suggests that insect cognition is more flexible than previously understood. The bees solved a problem they were not supposed to be able to solve, using a method their human overseers did not think of. The implications for artificial intelligence are left as an exercise for the listener. Story 3. A Tibetan activist identified as Lobga Rangdak died on July 3 after setting himself on fire outside the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan to protest China's occupation of Tibet. Voice of Tibet, a Tibetan XL media outlet, confirmed his identity. The act of self-immolation as political protest has a long and grim history in the Tibetan independence movement. That it happened outside the building that is supposed to represent the international community's commitment to human rights is not a contradiction. It is a statement about the gap between what the UN Charter says and what the UN does. The building stood. The fire burned. The world moved on. Day 130. A tanker was hit, a summit began, a chip maker made more money than it knew what to do with and was punished for it, and the most powerful AI models in existence were quietly unshackled on the same week the world's governments sat down to discuss how to regulate them. The connective tissue is not a plan. It is a pattern. Every institution in this episode is operating on a shorter time horizon than the problems it is trying to solve. NATO is arguing about budgets while a strait burns. Investors are selling Samsung because next quarter might not be as good as this one. The US government is releasing dangerous AI models because the alternative, slowing down, is politically unacceptable. The only thing faster than the technology is the rate at which we are deciding not to think about the consequences.